I woke up to the sound of my wife's voice telling a doctor she'd rather sign a form than sign up for another week of waiting. They thought I couldn't hear them. That mistake is the only reason any of them are still walking around free today. My name is Walter Doyle. I'm 62 years old. I live in a town called Fairhope, Alabama, right on the eastern shore of Mobile Bay. In a house my father helped me pour the foundation for back in 1994. I started a company out of a rented garage on Section Street when I was 31. Doyle Marine and Dock Supply. We build and service private boat docks, boat lifts, seawalls, that kind of thing up and down the Gulf Coast. 31 years later, we've got 52 employees, a fleet of work barges, and contracts with half the marinas between Pensacola and Gulf Shores. I built that from nothing. I want you to remember that part. My wife, Denise, is 59. We'd been married 33 years. My son, Bryce, is 30. He's had a title at the company for 6 years, Director of Operations, though what he mostly directs is his golf handicap. My daughter, Casey, is 26, lives in Daphne, works part-time at a boutique she calls a small business, even though I'm the one who fronted the lease. And then there's my stepson, Marcus, 36. Denise had him before I met her, back when she was 20, and his father was a man who left town before Marcus's first birthday and never came back. I met Denise when Marcus was 5 years old. I raised that boy, coached his little league team, paid for his braces, his truck, his first year of community college, when nobody else would. He kept his father's last name, but I never once treated him like anything less than my own. I made him a supervisor. I trusted him with keys to every warehouse we owned. I'm telling you all this because you need to understand what I thought I had, before I tell you what I actually had. It was a Thursday night in September. I'd been out at our yard on the causeway, checking on a barge repair that was running behind schedule, the kind of small fire I put out 3 times a week. I left around 9:15. I remember the radio was on, some ball game out of Atlanta. I remember slowing down for the light at Highway 98. I don't remember the truck that ran it. They told me later it was a delivery van doing almost 50 miles an hour, and that it hit my driver's side door so hard the frame of my truck folded like a soda can. They said the jaws of life took 11 minutes to get me out. They said I was lucky. Everybody kept telling me how lucky I was. I woke up, partially, 4 days later. And for a long stretch of this story, I wish I hadn't. Hey, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, hit subscribe, because this story earns it. Drop a comment, and tell me where you're listening from tonight. Let's get into it. Here's something nobody tells you about a coma. It isn't rest. It isn't peace. It's more like being buried alive in your own skin. You can hear every word spoken over you, but you cannot lift a finger, cannot open an eyelid, cannot make a single sound to let anyone know you're still in there. I was in that exact kind of dark on the 3rd day when I heard a doctor's voice and, right behind it, Denise's. Mr. Doyle's vitals have stabilized, the doctor said. His brain activity is trending in the right direction. But I want to be honest with you both. He could remain like this for another week, possibly longer. And if he doesn't come out of it? Denise asked. Steady, almost businesslike. Then we'd need to sit down and talk about his care directive. Long-term options. What kind of options? That was Bryce. My son, right there in the room. Ventilator support long-term, feeding tube placement, and depending on how his brain scans progress, whether resuscitation is appropriate if his heart were to stop. There was a pause. Then Denise spoke again, and her voice had the same tone she used for ordering dinner. He told me once he never wanted to be kept alive hooked up to machines. If it comes to his heart stopping, I want to sign the DNR. I don't want him suffering. I felt something inside my chest just fold in on itself. Did she just... He said that to me too, Mom, Bryce added. Quick. A little too quick, like he'd been rehearsing it in the parking lot. He always said if something like this ever happened, he didn't want to be a burden on anybody. I have never in 62 years of living said one word like that. Not once. He's 62, Denise said to the doctor. He's had a good long run. He'd hate for us to sit here watching machines breathe for him. A good long run. My wife of 33 years called my life a good long run. The way you'd talk about a used car that finally gave out. I heard the click of a ballpoint pen. She signed it right there, an arm's length from my bed, while I lay there and listened and could not do one single thing about it. Don't move, I told myself. Don't so much as twitch an eyelash. That thought did more to keep me alive than any machine in that room. They came back that evening, all of them this time. I heard the door, heard chairs scraping the floor, heard the crinkle of a snack bag. Bryce, it's always Bryce. Casey spoke first. He looks the same, she said. Stable, Denise said. They're saying another week, maybe. Casey let out a sigh, and it wasn't a sad sigh. It was the sigh of somebody being inconvenienced. I've got the shop, Mom. I can't keep driving out here every other day. Nobody's asking you to move in, Bryce said. He was never around for any of my stuff growing up anyway, Casey said. Every recital, every graduation, he was always at the yard or on a job site. Now I'm supposed to drop everything? She wasn't wrong about the hours I worked. She wasn't wrong about that part. But I was doing it for them, every single one of them. Then Marcus spoke, calm the way he always was, in a supervisor meeting. He made it pretty clear over the years he didn't want to be a burden on anybody. I think we honor that. Exactly, Bryce said, then quieter, like he thought I couldn't hear the volume drop. Besides, once the estate's settled, the trust kicks in. I saw the paperwork in his office last spring. I know what my number is. I'm 30 years old. I've been waiting on this. Bryce. Denise's voice. Sharp. Not here. Once the estate's settled. My son had gone through my private files and had already penciled my death into his calendar like a delivery date. 3 feet from my bed. I cannot describe what that does to a man, and I'm not going to try. Over the next 4 days, I heard things I will carry to my own grave, whenever it finally comes for real. I heard Bryce in the hallway, thinking he'd stepped far enough from the door that I was too far gone to matter, telling somebody on the phone, yeah, he's not coming out of it. They're saying, hey, look into that lot out on Weeks Bay for me, the one on the water. I'll have cash free soon. Cash free. His father. Cash free. I heard Casey telling Denise she thought our house on Mobile Street was way too much house for one person, and that Mom ought to think about something smaller, after. Just after. Like I was a weather system passing through. And I heard Marcus. Quiet, efficient Marcus, the man I made a supervisor, the man I took fishing on my own boat every summer since he was 9, the man I co-signed an auto loan for in 2020, because that's what family does. I heard him tell Denise, and I am quoting this exactly, the faster we get the estate wrapped up, the cleaner the transition is at the company. I already know the accounts. I can step right in. I bet you can, Marcus. I didn't know the full shape of what that meant yet, but something cold dropped into my stomach, and it never really left. Day 7. The nurse practically screamed when my eyes opened. There was noise, light, people rushing in who weren't expecting good news that shift. The doctor ran through his questions. What year is it? Who's the governor? Can you squeeze my hand? I answered everyone clean. And when Denise walked through that door 20 minutes later, her face did something I've replayed 100 times since. There was relief on it. I'll give her that much. There was relief. But underneath it, for about half a second, something else moved across her face and then vanished so fast I nearly told myself I'd imagined it. She hugged me. She cried real tears. She said, I was so scared I was going to lose you. I said, I know. I'm lucky to have you all. Every word out of my mouth was a lie, and it was the first time in 33 years of marriage that lying to her felt like the easiest thing in the world. They sent me home 2 days later. Bryce carried my bag in. Casey had stocked the refrigerator. First time in years she'd done anything like that for me. Marcus stood in my own kitchen and said, We've got everything covered at the yard, Walt. Don't even think about work. Thank you, son, I said. Son. The word tasted like rust in my mouth. But I smiled, and I sat down in my recliner, and I ate the soup Denise made me, and I played the most convincing role of my entire life. A tired, grateful, slightly foggy, 62-year-old man just glad to be alive. I was none of those things. I told everybody I was still getting dizzy spells, still needed quiet, still wasn't sharp enough to go back to the yard. Denise believed it instantly, which told me plenty about how closely she'd actually been watching me the last several years. Bryce nodded and went right back to whatever Bryce does with his afternoons, which from what I could tell, mostly involves the back nine at Rock Creek. Casey texted every few days. Marcus said, "Take all the time you need, I've got it handled." "I'm sure you do, Marcus." The first call I made was to a lawyer. Not Sam Pruitt, who'd handled our family's paperwork for 18 years and who Denise had probably had lunch with more recently than I'd like to know. I needed somebody clean. A buddy from the Rotary Club pointed me to a man named Del Ashworth, an estate and fraud attorney with a small office off Fairhope Avenue, no fancy lobby, no need for one. I sat down across from him and said, "I need to know if my family has been stealing from me, and I need you to start from the assumption that they have." He didn't blink. "Then let's find out." The second call was to a private investigator named Ruth Calloway, who worked out of Daphne and drove a gray Camry that could disappear in any parking lot in the county. I told her everything: the hospital, the Weeks Bay comment, Marcus's line about knowing the accounts, Denise's voice signing that DNR. Ruth wrote it all down without a flicker of reaction. Then she looked up and asked, "How long you two been married?" 33 years. She just nodded slowly and kept writing. Week 3 is where the floor dropped out from under me completely. Del called me on a Tuesday morning while Denise was at her water aerobics class. "Walt," he said, "I need you sitting down for this." I drove myself out there. First time behind the wheel since the crash. He had a folder on his desk, thick as a phone book. "Your stepson," he said, "has been pulling money out of Doyle Marine for close to 4 years. The number was $610,000. Fake vendor invoices for dock hardware that never existed. Ghost maintenance contracts. All of it routed through a shell company called Bay Point Consulting, registered out of Delaware. Invisible, unless you already knew exactly where to dig." "He set it up," Del said, "because, and this is in some internal messages we recovered, he was worried he wouldn't be treated the same as your biological kids when it came to the will, since he's not your blood. I had put that boy through his first year of college. I had co-signed his truck loan. I had told him to his face more than once, 'You're my son, Marcus. You don't need to worry about a thing.' And he'd been robbing me the entire time." "There's more," Del said. Of course there was. Denise co-signed 11 of these transactions. She has authority on the business accounts. Some of this money doesn't move without her signature. My wife hadn't just stood at my hospital bed and agreed to let me die. She'd been signing off on her son stealing my company out from under me for years. "The property," I said. "Tell me about Weeks Bay." Months before the wreck, with Denise's help every step of the way, Marcus had drawn up a forged power of attorney, her real signature, my forged one, and the moment it looked like I wasn't waking up, he'd filed a fraudulent deed at the county courthouse, putting his own name on the title of our house, on Mobile Street, and on the equipment warehouse out on the causeway. He moved fast, Del said. He had this whole thing ready to go, just waiting on the right moment. Our forensic document examiner already confirmed the signature on the POA is a forgery, clean as day. I can have a suit filed to freeze both properties and strip his name off within the week. But the second we file, he'll know we're onto him. Then we don't file yet. When? I thought about the anniversary. Everyone's smiling around one table. After the party, I said. Ruth Calloway called 2 days after that. I was on my back porch, watching the bay go still in the evening heat, when my phone buzzed. You want to hear about the personal trainer? She said. Tell me. Name's Dean Hargett, 36. Works out of a gym off Highway 181. Your wife's been seeing him 16 months. 16 months. I did the math without meaning to. 16 months ago, we'd gone to a New Year's party at the yacht club. She wore a navy dress. We danced to something forgettable. At midnight, she kissed me and said, "This year's going to be good to us." 2 weeks after that, she signed up for personal training sessions 3 mornings a week. I set the phone down on the porch rail and stared at the water until my hands stopped shaking. 33 years, not 33 bad ones. Either we had real years in there, good ones. I wasn't some husband who forgot birthdays and skipped every Christmas. I worked too much, maybe, I'll own that, but I showed up. I built the whole life she was now quietly handing out to her son and her gym instructor like party favors. I still needed one more piece. I reached out to a man named Otis Greer, who'd run our accounting office for 9 years before Bryce, in one of his rare flexes of actual authority, had him demoted over what Bryce called a personality conflict, which really just meant Otis had corrected him twice in front of other people. Otis agreed to meet me at a coffee shop downtown. He was already sitting there when I walked in, and he looked at me like a man who'd been waiting a long while to finally say something out loud. "I flagged those vendor invoices 2 years ago," he said before I even sat down. "Bryce told me I was overstepping, but it wasn't Bryce running that money. It was Marcus. And your daughter." I set my coffee down. "Casey?" "Marcus was routing cash through Bay Point," Otis said, sliding a flash drive across the table. "But look at the secondary transfers. He was cutting a monthly check straight into Casey's boutique account. She found out what her mother and Marcus were doing about a year back. Instead of coming to you, she asked for a cut to keep quiet. She's been running that store on your stolen money the whole time." Otis became my inside man for the next 10 days. He'd kept his own backup records the whole time he worked there, because that's exactly the kind of careful man he is, and together we rebuilt the entire timeline, dates, amounts, every signature, while I sat at home eating soup and pretending to still be foggy from a head injury I'd fully recovered from 3 weeks earlier. By the end of that 4th week, here's what sat in a folder on Del Ashworth's desk. Denise, an affair with Dean Hargett, going on 16 months, co-signer on Marcus's fraud, helped forge the power of attorney, told a doctor to let me die. Marcus, $610,000 stolen over 4 years, a forged deed on 2 of my properties, told the same doctor he agreed I shouldn't be revived. Bryce, no knowledge of the fraud or the affair, but sat in my ICU room talking about cash and waterfront lots, wanted his inheritance early, told the doctor his dad wouldn't want to be a burden. Casey, knew about the theft for a year, took a monthly kickback to stay silent, lied straight to a doctor's face about her father's wishes. I cleared out our joint savings, a little over $400,000. Denise thought I never checked, and moved every cent into a private account at a bank 2 counties over, completely legal. My name on every distribution that had built that balance in the first place. I had a new will drawn up. The old one was generous. The new one was going to be a lesson. I want to be clear about something. I'm not a hateful man. I build boat docks for a living. I like things level, measured, done right the first time. What I was setting up wasn't rage. It was logistics. And I had 1 delivery left to make. Our 33rd anniversary was 6 days out. Denise brought it up one night at dinner, bright as anything, said we should do something special, this being an odd one worth celebrating. "Absolutely," I told her. "Let's invite everybody." She squeezed my hand across the table. I squeezed back. Every single one of them was going to be under the same roof, and every single one of them was going to get exactly what they'd earned. She planned the whole thing, invitations to 18 neighbors from around the point, our pastor from Fairhope Methodist, catering trucked in from a place on Fairhope Avenue instead of grocery store trays. She ordered a banner, 33 years, the Doyle family. I found it rolled up on the kitchen counter 3 days before the party and stood there staring at it longer than I should admit. The party landed on a Saturday evening in late October, right when the Gulf finally lets go of that thick summer heat around sundown, and you can stand outside on the water without sweating through your shirt. Our backyard was strung with string lights, the bay behind it catching the color and throwing it back almost pretty. Almost. Bryce showed up first, dressed like he'd wandered off a golf course, which is Bryce's factory setting. He clapped me on the back. "Looking good, Pop. You bounced back quick." "Feeling better than I have in years, honestly," I told him. He had no idea how true that was. Casey came in behind him, hugged her mother, handed me a card. Inside she'd written, "Dad, so glad you're okay. Love you." I looked at her handwriting a long moment. Thought about a little girl asleep in her car seat on the drive home from dance practice. Thought about where that girl had gone. "Thank you, sweetheart," was all I said. Marcus arrived last, because Marcus always arrives last, like it makes him look important. Blazer on, even in October heat. He shook my hand with both of his the way he does when he's performing warmth instead of feeling it. 33 years, Walt. That's really something. It really is. I said. Got a little something for everybody tonight. A gift. He smiled. Yeah? What kind? The kind that changes things. He laughed like it was a joke. It wasn't. By 8 o'clock, the yard was full, drinks going, neighbors laughing along the fence line. Denise moved through the crowd in a green dress, like a woman with nothing to hide. Del Ashworth was parked down the street in his truck with a folder on the passenger seat. Ruth Calloway had made one phone call that afternoon on my behalf. 2 Baldwin County deputies sat in an unmarked car around the corner. Everything was already in position. I walked to the middle of the patio, picked up a fork, tapped my glass. The yard went quiet. Denise looked over and smiled that warm, practiced smile she wears in public like a piece of jewelry. 33 years. I started. That's a long stretch of road. You build things together. You sacrifice. You make choices every single day hoping they're worth it in the end. A few neighbors nodded along. Nearly dying has a way of clearing your head, I went on. Lying in that hospital bed, there wasn't much to do but listen. And I heard things in that room I don't believe I'll ever be able to forget. Things that changed something in me for good. So tonight, on our anniversary, in front of everybody who's watched us build this life, I want to share what I learned. I reached down to the table beside me. 4 envelopes, each one with a name written across the front in my own handwriting. Dead silence in that yard now. Bryce stepped up first, drink still in hand, smiling like a man expecting a bonus check. I handed him his envelope. Inside sat a printed transcript, every word he'd said in that ICU room, the cash comment, the lot out on Weeks Bay. I know what my number is. Underneath it, a letter from Doyle Marine HR, dated that same Friday. Bryce, you're terminated from Doyle Marine and Dock Supply, effective immediately. Company truck to be returned by end of day. His smile didn't vanish all at once. It drained, slow, like water leaving a tub. And, in case you're wondering, I told him, the new will leaves you exactly $1,000. Use it for cash flow. Dad, I'm not finished with. Casey walked over next, arms already folded, took her envelope like it might bite her. Same transcript, her lines highlighted. He was never around growing up, why should I care? Beneath it, a printed still from the hospital hallway security camera, time-stamped the exact moment she told her mother the house on Mobile Street was too much for one person. You knew about the money for a year, Casey, I said, steady. And you took a check every month to keep quiet about it. Your name's coming off the boutique lease Monday morning. You've got 30 days to find a new arrangement. I let that sit. Same as your brother, $1,000 in the new will. Spend it however you like. Denise hadn't moved. She set her glass down very carefully and walked over, took her envelope with both hands. Inside, Ruth's surveillance report, 16 months of dates and a gym address and a motel off Highway 98 on Tuesday afternoons. Beneath that, copies of her signature on 11 fraudulent transfers, the forged power of attorney sitting right next to mine except mine was the forgery, and every soul in that yard was about to understand that. And under all of it, divorce papers, already filed, already processed. She went pale, not tearful, pale, the way a person goes when their body starts working out something their mind hasn't caught up to yet. 33 years, I said, quiet, and you couldn't give me 7 more days. You told a doctor that 62 was a good long run. She looked at the banner over our heads, at the neighbors staring at the ground. My settlement offer is the old rental property out on County Road 32. Take it, or take your chances explaining 11 forged signatures to a judge. She had nothing to say to that, not one word. Marcus hadn't moved from the edge of the patio. His blazer looked like a costume on him now. I didn't hand him an envelope. I just looked at him. Your father left before you could walk, I said. I married your mother when you were 5 years old, and I gave you a real home and my last name in every way that mattered even though you never took it. I coached your teams. I co-signed your first truck. I made you a supervisor and gave you keys to buildings I'd have trusted with my own life. And for 4 years, you stole $610,000 from me. His jaw tightened. Walt, whatever you think you've got. I don't think anything. I know. Dell filed a criminal complaint for forgery and embezzlement with the sheriff's office 2 days ago. The warrant came through this afternoon. I looked toward the side gate. Come on in. Two deputies walked through in plain clothes. The whole backyard made a sound I still can't fully describe. Somebody's glass hitting the patio stones. Bryce actually stepping backward like he could put distance between himself and what was happening. One deputy said, "Marcus Teague." Marcus looked at me one last time, and something in his face finally cracked, not shame exactly, more like the specific look of a man who'd bet everything on somebody staying gone for good. "You told me I was your son," he said, low. "I meant it," I told him. Every word. They walked him out through the side gate while the yard watched in total silence. Denise had a hand over her mouth. Bryce stared at his shoes. Casey was crying real tears, though I couldn't tell you what exactly they were for. I picked my glass back up. "Thank you all for coming tonight," I told the neighbors. "I mean that. Go on and eat. The food's good." I picked it myself. A few stunned faces stared back at me. I finished my drink, set the glass down clean, and walked through my own house and out the front door into the warm Alabama night. My truck had been packed since Thursday. I pulled off Mobile Street for the last time, turned north, and kept driving. My phone buzzed once on the seat. Denise. I let it ring out. A few minutes down the road, I pulled onto the shoulder, typed one line, and sent it before I could talk myself out of it. I heard every word. Then I put the phone in the glove box, rolled the windows down, and let the bay air do the rest of the talking. They wanted me gone. Instead, I gave every one of them the truth, in front of everybody who ever mattered to them. You wanted an inheritance? You got exactly what you earned. If this one hit you somewhere, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't, and tell me in the comments where you're listening from tonight. I'll see you in the next one. The truest wealth I ever built wasn't in any bank account. It was the quiet trust of the people who love me for real. Money can buy silence, but it can't buy loyalty. If someone in your life still shows up when there's nothing to gain, hold on to them tighter tonight. That's the whole return on investment that actually matters, friend. A small note for you. This story was written and fictionalized by AI purely for entertainment, while hoping to leave you with a genuine, positive life lesson.